Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and this is a little reading and life update. I haven't uploaded a video in a while, so I thought I'd just give you a little update because I know that not everyone's going to be interested in my own private happenings. The first part of this video is going to be the reading update, so if you're here for the books, then stick around for the first part. If you're here for the other stuff, then watch till the end. Let's get right into the books that I am currently reading. The first one that I'm sure many of you have read and even more of you have heard of, because this book is about as old as I am. It's Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. I am pretty much halfway through, about 200 pages in. This is how to describe the genre and setup of this novel. I guess it is an apocalyptic novel, which I like. I like me some dystopian and post-apocalyptic novels, and this I guess technically is pre-apocalyptic. It is a fantasy-ish. It's about the end of the world and about what happens in the week leading up to the end of the world. It's the sort of novel that has a whole cast of characters. It kind of focuses in on two main characters, an angel and a demon, who are sort of working together and against each other to prevent the end of the world. But it also has a wider cast of characters, including the Antichrist, who's a little boy living in a village in England. There's a witch hunter. There's all sorts of different characters that play together to make this happen. What exactly is going to happen, I don't know yet, because I am only halfway through. But you can tell I'm finding it slightly confusing to talk about this book, because I'm also finding it slightly confusing to read. Now, I am familiar with Terry Pratchett's writing more than Neil Gaiman's writing. I have read a decent amount of Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels. I've even read one of his earlier books that's not set in the Discworld. So I'm recognizing his style in this and his type of storytelling. Neil Gaiman I am less familiar with. I have read a novel called The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which I thought was okay, but I didn't really get the hype. This book feels like a sort of mix between the two. It is endlessly quirky, as you'd expect. It is really quite funny. It's got some amazing one-liners. It's got whole paragraphs that I read and read again, and then I say to Bill, "Hey Bill, listen to this paragraph," and I read it out loud, because it's that kind of observational humour that Terry Pratchett is known for, that really kind of gets to the very centre of certain issues surrounding mostly British society. And I'm enjoying those aspects quite a lot. The confusing aspect is the problems you get when you have a story that's centered around this whole cast of characters, where you jump from one character to another. And I personally don't get on with those kinds of stories as much as stories that focus on one character or maybe two characters. So I'm having a little bit of an issue with that. It makes the book less gripping for me. It makes it less page-turny, if you know what I mean. And there are certain characters in this book that I really like, that I want to read more about. And then there are other characters that I'm kind of a little bit less excited about. So when we get to scenes, for example, that center around this group of children, I'm just a little bit less excited about those. So it's been taking me a while to get through this book, because I don't find it super gripping. I don't necessarily feel the need to keep reading until the end, but I am very much enjoying what I am reading. So overall, I think a good pick. Despite what I've just said, it is an easy read, it is engaging, it's funny, and it certainly is original. So the first book I'm reading is one that, as I've said, most of you will have at least heard about, whereas for the second book, I can guarantee that almost none of you will know about it, and it is this book. This is called Das Ratzennest, which means the rat's nest, and it is by Hermann Alexander Neugaard. This is a historical novel that was published in 1950 and is set in the 30-Year War. The reason why this is such a niche classic historical novel is that it is set in my hometown, where I was born and grew up and lived the first 18 years of my life. This is probably the most obscure novel that I have read, and it has absolutely no appeal to anyone who is not from my town. It's old school style historical fiction. If you have read a 20th century novel that is set centuries earlier, you probably know what I'm talking about. I feel like a lot of historical fiction that was written in the 20th century was written with a design to educate, with an intention to teach the reader about history. So this book is very clearly written with the design of teaching me how the 30-Year War unfolded in my hometown. As that, it is achieving it pretty well. As a story, it's not quite so easy to go through as a modern day historical novel would be. So if, for example, there was a modern day historical novel set in the 30-Year War, it would be a lot more focused, a lot more closed in on maybe one character or a set of characters and their stories. Whereas this is very much a sort of sweeping look at a whole town at once through certain characters. It seems meticulously researched. In fact, there is a whole lot of endnotes where certain events are described in more detail or the primary source is mentioned. And I have absolutely no trouble believing that everything that is in this book actually happens. But that doesn't mean that it reads more like a history book than a novel. Now, for me, that's fine, because I am interested in history and because I find it just fascinating to read a book that's set in the very streets that I know. And this is something that you'll know if you also grew up in an old town, in a town where the buildings are centuries old, where the very infrastructure of the town hasn't changed for centuries. And this is one such book about one such town. And therefore, I'm finding it quite fascinating. But it's not an easy read. And in fact, I am only 40 pages into this book. To be fair, it's printed pretty small. But it's, again, not a very page-turning book. Absolutely fascinating, though. If you've not yet read a novel that's set in a place that you know well, I'd highly recommend you do so, because even if that novel isn't something that you would normally read or isn't something that's to your usual standard of literature, I can guarantee you'll still find it fascinating to see places you recognize in fiction. Also, if you live in like London or New York City or something like that, do you just get bored of books being set there? Because with the amount of books that I read that are set in London, I can imagine that if you live in London, you're quite happy to escape from that city in the books that you read. Let me know if you live in a city that is a popular setting for fiction. Finally, I want to mention audiobooks, because I have just finished an audiobook, Melmoth by Sarah Perry. I hope I got that author name right. And I am just about to start another one. And this is another obscure classic, which is called City of Endless Night by Milo Hastings. This book was published in 1920 and it is an American dystopian novel. Now, you probably know I love dystopian classics. This book was written after the First World War, and it imagines a future in an authoritarian dystopian Berlin. This book was actually sent to me as an audiobook by the audiobook narrator Luke Boardman. So thank you once again, Luke. I feel a little bit bad about this because I told him I was going to listen to it in February, and then it just took me forever to finish the previous audiobook. So I'm getting to this now, and I'm very excited about this. So these were the books that I'm currently reading. Well, 2 books that I'm currently reading and 1 book that I'm about to start. Let me know which of these you'd be interested in a book review in. I didn't publish a book review video in, I think, February or March, so I'm definitely due one soon. So let me know which of these you'd be interested in hearing my opinion about. Book titles and links in the description box as usual. Now let's get to the life update portion of this. If you're still around, then hello. I'm moving again. This is not entirely unexpected. If you've kept up with my adventures of moving to Germany in the middle of a pandemic from Wales, then you'll know that this place that I'm living in right now is a holiday apartment. That was a lifesaver when we moved here, to move into a place in the middle of a lockdown that is fully furnished with everything already sorted out. Didn't have to sort out internet or electricity or any of that stuff. You could just move in here, unpack our suitcases and start living. We were meant to live here for 3 months until the end of February. However, when we started looking for more permanent rentals, there was nothing. We did not find anything. This is a very competitive area of Germany. Lots of people want to live here, and it was just very hard to find something, especially with 2 cats. So as February approached, we asked the landlord here to extend our stay for another month, and then pretty much just as we'd done that, we found a new apartment. And it's pretty perfect. It's nice and large. I'll finally have an office again. I mean, a shared office with Bill, but that's still fine. I'll have a desk where I can put a computer and I can sit in a real chair and work. Oh, you have no idea how much I've missed that. I've been working from the sofa and from the dining table, and it's just not the same. So we've got this nice new large apartment. The only downside is that the walls are painted yellow. It is a temporary let again, so this one is limited to the end of next January, because then the landlords want to move in themselves. But that's fine, because Bill and I are hoping that we'll get a mortgage by that time and we'll be able to buy our own property by next January. We'll see how that goes though, but worst case is we move into another rental after that. But anyway, we have a home for the next 10 months and now we are preparing to move. Big problem, Germany has just announced another 5-day lockdown over Easter, which is exactly the weekend where we are moving. The move was already tricky to begin with. We don't have a car. We have 1 bicycle between us, and I say between us, it's Bill's bicycle. So we have 1 bicycle and no car, and we are moving from the village where we currently live to a nearby town. And now the government has decided the strictest ever lockdown from Thursday before Easter until Easter Monday. It's gonna be tricky. Our plan at the moment is to rent a van and load up and drive to our new home and unpack. But that does mean that we are stuck without furniture, including without a bed. That's the main thing, right? We're not going to have a bed. We're not even going to have a mattress because you can't have anything delivered over the holidays. Without internet, it is stressful. It is stressful. And I think that's why I haven't had the mind to do much reading and I haven't had the mind to do much booktube, because my entire life is currently revolving around figuring out how to move. Figuring out where we can rent a van and how we can drive that here and how we are going to sleep for the first 4 nights of our new apartment. I have ordered an air mattress with an electric pump. I made sure that this one had one because last time I had to pump an air mattress by foot. It was a pain. Air mattress is on its way, and then we're gonna have to buy some bedding, and at least we'll have that. Maybe if it's exciting rather than annoying, I'll vlog it as well, although that will probably appear on my second channel, Claudia's House, link in the description box. And yeah, right now I'm just full of worry. How are the cats going to get on? How bad of an idea is it to have an empty apartment with 2 cats and an air mattress? remind me to clip their claws a few days before we move. On the upside though, I have been reserving secondhand furniture left, right and centre. I've been browsing the German equivalent of Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Germans, you know what I'm talking about. I've been browsing secondhand furniture in the area, and I have so far reserved an armchair, a sofa, a rocking chair, which I'm incredibly excited about, a desk, though we haven't got desk chair yet, and 4 dining chairs. A lot of other stuff is being gifted to me by my mother, who is, I don't want to call her a hoarder because I believe that has a very specific definition, but she has a lot of stuff. And she's had a lot of stuff for years. It was about 4 years ago when I first tried to get her to give away some of the things that she had. For example, she has, and I'm not exaggerating, she has over 100 drinking glasses, like just water glasses. And it's not that she buys them new, but either people gift them to her, or she picks them up secondhand, or she picks them up from the Sperrmüll. Again, Germans, you know what I'm talking about. For the non-Germans, by the side of the road. She has got huge collections of knickknacks, glasses, kitchen gadgets. I mean, like, we're talking towers and towers of tea towels and bedding and all sorts of stuff. So she has offered to give me some very useful things like saucepans, because they are really bloody expensive new. Things like cheese graters. She's got this amazing microplane cheese grater that someone gifted her, but she doesn't use it because she'd rather use her 25-year-old crappy grater that doesn't grate anymore. She'd rather use that one than the shiny new one, so she's giving the shiny new one to me, and so on. I actually talked to her the other day and I said, hey, I bought a second-hand kettle on eBay Kleinanzeigen. It was only 10 euros. And then she says, wow, I'm really offended at that. You should have asked me first, because I've got a spare kettle that you could have just had. Why did you go and buy a second-hand kettle first without asking me? People don't have spare kettles. That's not a normal thing for someone to own. People have one kettle and then they replace that kettle with another kettle. How did you come by a second kettle? Why is this in your possession? But anyway, that's the sort of person she is. So we're getting a lot of stuff from her as well. Oh, we're getting a coffee machine from her. And again, my mum has like at least 3 coffee machines. They all make slightly different types of espresso. My mum is Italian, by the way, so it's very important to her that she always has coffee. But yet again, why a person needs more than one coffee machine is a mystery to me. So anyway, we're getting a free coffee machine, which I'm super excited about. I've never owned my own coffee machine other than the ones you put on the hob, so that's great. And yeah, we're just kind of slowly getting our life together. We are trying to make the best of the situation. If there wasn't a pandemic going on, obviously we'd be browsing furniture shops. We'd be taking a little trip to IKEA. There are quite a lot of second-hand shops around here that I know exist, but that aren't open, so I can't go in them and browse them and buy from them. It's not an ideal situation, and we are trying to make the best of it, but it is incredibly stressful. Well, now you know what's been going on. I hope that you are doing as well as possible under the circumstances. I think that crossing that 1-year anniversary of the pandemic starting is getting to all of us. And even though I often fail to take my own advice, I hope that you are kind to yourselves, you are kind to others, and you do the best you can to get to the other side of this. Thank you for watching. Bye.